Hello, thank you so much for joining me. The other day, I took a walk through a local cemetery. It was such a beautiful day outside, and this cemetery is fairly old and has some very beautiful old tombs, and it's in a wooded area. It's just a very beautiful, peaceful place to go. When I was young, I was so afraid of cemeteries. I remember I had heard a ghost story about one, and I think it was just a sort of silly story, but as a child it frightened me, and I remember that in the story there was a cemetery outside of a child's window, and I remember looking out my window at night just to make sure that no tombstones had cropped up when I wasn't looking. And then as I got older, when I was in high school, I remember thinking cemeteries were kind of cool and wanting to hang out in them just because it was different. And in college, when I went through a sort of goth phase, I remember walking with friends through cemeteries at midnight, and we just felt like we were very, very cool. So now it's a little different. I usually visit cemeteries in the daytime, and I just go because they're beautiful and there aren't usually a lot of people there, and it's a nice place to sit and think or just to look around. I took this footage and then I kind of wasn't sure what to say about it, and the day after I took it, a friend of mine just happened to point out to me a poem called Thanatopsis, which means a consideration of death. The poem is by William Cullen Bryant, and it was written in the early 1800s. So I'm just going to read that poem to you all. I thought it was really very profound and comforting, and then I was also going to share with you something that I sort of imagined while I was at the cemetery. So I'll go ahead and start off with this reading of Thanatopsis. To him who in the love of nature holds communion with her visible forms, she speaks a various language. For his gayer hours, she has a voice of gladness and a smile and eloquence of beauty, and she glides into his darker musings with a mild and healing sympathy that steals away their sharpness ere he is aware. When thoughts of the last bitter hour come like a blight over thy spirit, and sad images of the stern agony and shroud and pall and breathless darkness and the narrow house make thee to shudder and grow sick at heart, go forth under the open sky and list to nature's teachings, while from all around earth and her waters and the depths of air comes a still voice. Yet a few days, and thee the all-beholding sun shall see no more in all his course, nor yet in the cold ground where thy pale form was laid with many tears, nor in the embrace of ocean shall exist thy image. Earth that nourished thee shall claim thy growth, to be resolved to earth again, and, lost each human trace, surrendering up thine individual being, shalt thou go to mix forever with the elements, to be a brother to the insensible rock and to the sluggish clod, which the rude swain turns with his shear and treads upon. The oak shall send his roots abroad and pierce thy mould. Yet not to thine eternal resting place shalt thou retire alone, nor couldst thou wish couch more magnificent. Thou shalt lie down with patriarchs of the infant world, with kings, the powerful of the earth, the wise, the good, fair forms and hoary seers of ages past, all in one mighty sepulchre. the hills rock-ribbed and ancient as the sun, the vales stretching in pensive quietness between, the venerable woods, rivers that move in majesty, and the complaining brooks that make the meadows green, and poured round all old ocean's grey and melancholy waste, are but the solemn decorations all of the great tomb of man. The golden sun, the planets, all the infinite host of heaven, are shining on the sad abodes of death through the still lapse of ages. All that tread the globe are but a handful to the tribes that slumber in its bosom. Take the wings of morning, pierce the bark and wilderness, or lose thyself in the continuous woods where rolls the organ and hears no sound save his own dashings. Yet the dead are there, and millions in those solitudes, since first the flight of years began, have laid them down in their last sleep. The dead reign there alone. So shalt thou rest, and what if thou withdraw in silence from the living, and no friend take note of thy departure? All that breathe will share thy destiny. The gay will laugh when thou art gone, the solemn brood of care plod on, and each one as before will chase his favorite phantom. Yet all these shall I leave their mirth and their employments, and shall come and make their bed with thee. As the long train of ages glide away, the songs of men, the youth in life's green spring, and he who goes in the full strength of years, matron and maid, the speechless babe, and the gray-headed man, shall one by one be gathered to thy side by those who in their turn shall follow them. So live, that when thy summons comes to join the innumerable caravan which moves to that mysterious realm where each shall take his chamber in the silent halls of death, thou go not like the quarry slave at night scourged to his dungeon, but sustained and soothed by an unfaltering trust approach thy grave, like one who wraps the drapery of his couch about him and lies down to pleasant dreams. And what I was thinking about while I was there, just sort of imagining as I walked through and I looked at all the names on the tombstones, which ranged from royal to somewhat ridiculous, names where people had found their name in their profession or in their place of residence. So many names, just sort of fun to walk through and say them aloud. Sometimes there would be groupings of names where families had been buried together. And occasionally there were even sad little graves with no names, or with the names of sort of the person's role. There were quite a few graves actually that said mother or father, and that was all. And I started to wonder, what if when we were buried, instead of a name, our name on our tombstone, the stone placed on top of us sort of took on a name from who we had been? What if, as our body was laid under it, and while our physical self became part of the earth and nurtured the ground, sending up the plant life and, becoming part of the world, what if some element of our soul also rose upward and imprinted itself upon the stone that lay above us? What words would it say? What would the essence of ourself be that would be written on that stone? And how might we now, in our lives, write upon our souls, teach them to spell out the words that we would want our souls to whisper about us once we're gone?